Hey, welcome to Guitar Talk. My name's Stan Biankiewicz. To my right and to your left is Ken Unack, and to my left and your right is the infamous Mark Armstrong. And today, the subject of Guitar Talk and going on with not just blues, but we're expanding a little more into the chord substitutions. And today, we're going to be talking about not one note, but two note chords. Would you care to
elaborate on
elaborate?
that?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
All right. So in general, chords are 3 or more different notes. So even technically in the rock world, power chords are not technically chords. So the reason I'm using this term is the way I'm using these intervals is, first off, I'm going to suggest that there is a way that you can hear every interval in a very pure sense as a chord. And you just hear it as, and it's going to lead you to hear it in a certain way. But then once you start to utilize these intervals, you can put them together because there's only 2 notes, and so it's very easy to manipulate the notes that you're holding down. You got lots more fingers than notes. And so that you can put them together, sometimes very quickly, just like we were doing in the intro there, where you can start to hear it as a collective chord. And it's almost like, it's kind of like what Bach was doing when he's playing single notes and you were hearing chords, right? So this is taking it just in that same vein, where by putting it together in a context, I can get you to hear different notes in different ways. Nice. Yes. So
it started in the bass as power chord.
Right, we can take and map out for everything.
Wow.
Yeah, you can play jazz this way, and play folk and blues and all this other
rock
stuff.
too.
And rock, well, that's exactly. So what I have here first is where this all started from was the idea that, okay, if there's a way to think of each interval, let's study each interval. So I basically started from a C, and then above the C, I just ran all the other notes.
Yeah.
And I just did them chromatically. So I went C and D flat, C D, C E flat, C E, C F, C F sharp or G flat, C G, C G sharp, A, C B flat, and C B, and then I didn't do C C because that's not really 2 different notes, so it's really technically not even fit our 2-note chord definition.
Exactly.
All right. Okay, so my basic contention is that there's certain ways of looking at them. So on the sheet, and this sheet will be on the air at points. On the bottom of my first page here, I have labeled each of these intervals as a specific chord. And what I learned was that essentially one of these notes is going to sound like a root to you, and the other note is going to sound like another note of the chord. And now this is arbitrary to a degree, though I've found confirmation in this in some Paul Hindemith writings, that this is kind of the way we hear things. And I will say, just from using this for the last 30 years, that this is the way I hear it and feel it, and so it does work in a playing context.
Okay.
All right. So if you take the half step, right, which I'm just going to do these in order. So I'm going to put this up an octave. My contention is this is a D flat major 7 chord, right? That we have a C and a D flat.
Yeah.
So you say, well, that's pretty dissonant. And I'll say, yeah, it is pretty dissonant. But how about if I did something like this? Right? That sounds like a chord, and it sounds like now a chord I want to stop on. It doesn't sound that wrong anymore, and yet when you first heard that note, you go, ooh, that's very dissonant. So in context, that interval now has been softened. So you can sit there and say, well, that by itself is a D flat major 7 chord. Now, it can also be a lot of other things, again, in context, but I'm saying if I just play this out of the blue.
Well, may I play just
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, yes, you can hear it.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, for that in the same vein, if we make it a whole step, which is D and C, I will say that's going to be like a D minor 7 or a D7, either anything with a flat 7. Right.
Or the beginning of Chopsticks.
Right, yeah. Yes, exactly. Right. That's right. So those are the 2 that have the root on the top. So I always look at the 7th as the root's on top, and it's the 7th underneath it, is what we're playing around with. The next interval is or the next 2 intervals are the thirds. The minor third, which is C and E flat. Now you tell me, I just played that. Does that sound major or minor?
Major.
Really? Wow. Okay. That's major.
It doesn't sound major or minor to me.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But it's ambiguous.
Yeah.
Right? But if I do this, right? That's a lot brighter than this.
Exactly.
Right. But what I was saying is you basically the first thing I tend to hear with this is minor. I tend to hear this as a minor sound. Now, granted, you can hear it in context in lots of different ways. You know, there's as an A flat chord. If I put it as kind of like an E flat 6 chord, you know.
Yeah.
You know, we can do that, and it's still going to be the same thing, but just out of the blue. Now, but again, once you hear other notes, see, this is my whole point with this first idea of looking at these intervals. These intervals are only if you play them out of the blue by themselves. What's your first impression? It's only a starting point. These are not the only way to think about them. You know, it gives you some little bit of way to organize and explore so that you can go beyond this. Okay. So I tend to hear the thirds more as, now granted you can hear them as a third and a fifth, but I think it's a little harder to hear that. But again, in context, once I start running them together, so if I started doing, you know, like this, right. Or if I did, right, now you're going to hear that as major now.
Well, I hear it in because staying in C.
Yep, exactly.
You know, so I hear it as the major.
Right. And that was my point. C and E this is the major. It's C major. Yep, exactly. So now we come to the fourth. The fourth I really hear as the root is on the top. Right. So basically you got the top of a major chord, and this also is very helpful for slide playing. Knowing this, because all these become a chord with the root on top, root and fifth.
Right.
So you can always sit there and throw all these in on every set of strings except for the G and B string if you're in standard tuning. So it's kind of handy to have that little way to organize. The tritone is its own little special case. And the tritone is one of the most important intervals in music, but it's really hard to hear it as a root position chord, except as a diminished chord. It gets used as a lot for dominant sounds, as we've looked at before, you know, and, you know, like, you know, all this, you know. But as this, I tend to look at tritones as its own little separate issue in the two-note world. It's not really any kind of chord, it's just parts of dominant chords and other moving chords and dissonant chords. After this, basically what we start doing now is going the opposite way. So which no one's going to understand that one. But so I'm taking C and G now. So we got C and G, and here we got the classic power chord.
Yeah.
But actually, the fourth is also the power chord. And essentially, those are the two main power chords. And the thing about the root and the fourth with it on the top, or root and fifth with the root on the bottom, is they don't sound like major or minor. They are, and that's kind of why it gets used in rock a lot, because they distort well.
Yeah.
But they really don't give you a lot of information. So they, in one sense, so they give you the root, but they don't give you, or, you know, which, you know. But if I add that other part, you know, then you're just going to get the difference. And again, it's very Rorschach-y, in the sense that you hear what you've been led to hear. So you just heard this as a major chord when I play them.
Yeah.
You know, here's what I love to do with when I show people power chords. I said, here's power chords, right? Guess what you just didn't hear? You did not hear. You heard. Your ears filled in all the rest.
Yeah.
There's no way you heard that as a minor and an A major and a B major. It's just you know, you'd have to force your ear to hear that. Yeah.
Well, it's, at this point, it's in our DNA as far as Western music is concerned. Over the hundreds and hundreds of years it's been in existence.
Yep. Okay, so there's just a few more intervals here. We have the sixths, which is getting wider. So C and G sharp or C and A flat. And I always look at this at first as the root on top, and this is the third.
Yes.
And the same thing with the the C to G sharp or C to A. Oh wow, I think I did that. Oh no, C to A. Yeah, I did. We got that, and that's I tend to look at as A minor. And again, same rationale. All right. Then, last but not least, we have the sevenths. All right. So we have C to B flat, which I hear is yet another basically dominant minor 7th kind of sound. So it's like, and then when you do the C and B, it's a major 7. It's just the opposite of this, that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
And so
it's a nice little sound. I like it all by itself.
yeah. Well, that's the thing is you can start to get the pureness of the intervals, and it can be interesting. And yes, you can get dissonance by using dissonant intervals, even though you're playing inside a key. Okay, so that's my basic argument is that all those intervals have somewhat that sound, and it's like I said, it's a good place to start exploring these things. Now, one thing you can do with this concept, and so what I did on the next page is I took all of these different chords and I put them all on the root chord C or on the root C.
Right.
So now, and I broke it down as I've got the top 2 lines are for the root position ones, and the bottom 2 lines are for the root on top ones. And it's just a way to see how they all kind of fit together. So you have, so I started with the thirds, so then I've got, different places, and so I'm showing you all these little different places where you can play this exact set of intervals, right? And then like the major, all these different places, so this is all on this, that's the second page there, 2-note chords. Yep. But one thing to do, and this is a great game to play, is taking each one of these interval types through a key. Right? So you take, say, a third. Now, when you do this, you're going to be playing major and minor thirds. You're going to be playing major and minor 6. You're going to be playing flat 7s and major 7s. But you stay on that interval time. And it's really easy to do on the guitar. So say we take C and E. And this is an easy one to do. We take C and E. Basically, what you do is on each string, go up to the next note in the scale. So I'm going C up to D at the same time as I'm going E up to F. And then now this D up to E as F up to G. And you end up playing all the third intervals through the key.
Yes.
And then what you can do with this is learn how to solo just using that one interval shape. And so there is one strong one, the C and E. So if we're playing over a C, there's the C and E is going to be the strongest one. The E and the G is going to be the next strongest one. After that, there's not one third interval shape that has both C chord notes in it. So it's going to be either some kind of tension or dissonance that wants to be resolved. Why don't you play a C chord? I'll show you this. So if I play, so that's going to be the most resolved.
Yeah.
So if I go to here, I'm playing 2 notes that want to resolve. So I want to resolve it to here. And then also, I could take those notes and resolve it this way. Okay, so. Right? Now, the next little interval, I've got the F. The F is the most dissonant note against the C chord. It creates this flat 9 interval. So that really wants to resolve, and the F really wants to resolve to the E. Yep, exactly. Then the next thing we have G and B. The G and the B, the G is a chord tone, but the B is a dissonance. The B wants to resolve.
Right.
But if we're only using thirds, we can't quite resolve it the way we want to. The ultimate resolution would be this, but if we're just limiting ourselves to thirds, this is about as resolved as we get. The A is a little unresolved, but it's less unresolved than the B. And the C is the root. Then we get back, the next little blob is this B and D. Again, we have 2 notes that want tensions on the chord. They want to resolve and pull up. So now if you don't play that C chord, check what I can do. All right, so don't play this now. We'll say. Now, I can also use this information to say, okay, I can play an F chord here. Back to C. Right? And you're hearing, again, This is what I mean. You're hearing harmony, you're hearing 1 to 4. I never once played a chord. I'm playing intervals.
Right.
But by how I'm putting them together, how I'm emphasizing where they are in the measure on the beat, how they're resolving, you're hearing it in certain ways.
And on those same type of intervals, I just want to note to people, for those of you that play Margaritaville, that's exactly the kind of intervals you're using. But we're going into a D.
Correct.
As opposed to what Mark was reviewing as a C. So these are all these 2-note chords are actually, in many cases, used in accompaniment and in soloing.
Right. Oh, yeah. And that's like actually what's very interesting about these 2-note voicings is you can start to say, am I playing a harmony part? Am I playing a comping part? Am I playing a lead part? At some point, it doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, I got to say, I do a lot of playing on the 2 middle strings. I love the 2 middle strings. I call them the forgotten strings because no one knows what the notes are on them for the most part. But to me, this is the meat of the guitar. If you understand the two middle strings, everything radiates out from there.
Yep.
So if you're in there. Right? So you get kind of like the middle of the sound, and so it's easy to see how to put melodies above it and how to put bass notes below it.
Sure.
And also, it's just good to know those 2 strings. Right? So the second page here is just all of these intervals, and pretty much everywhere you can play them. I didn't put on the bottom 2 strings a lot of them, just because most people aren't going to play them down there.
I just want to mention the 6th interval that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And how you can manipulate chords. So here, in this case, it'd be G, A minor 7, B minor 7, A minor 7, G. But we also have
Sure, exactly.
Brown Eyed Girl.
Yep.
And like Mark said, you're not hearing the whole chord, but you are interpreting the chord.
Right, you're hearing the harmony.
The harmony, exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And what you just played is the whole basis of the blues.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is, again, why we're having this show on 2-note chords.
Right.
So this 6th thing, there it is. I mean, that's right out of any standard blues.
Yep. But if you start looking at it as little chords, so to me, you sort of played an E and a D there.
The
right?
5th and the 3rd.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, and the thing is there's, at some point we need to talk about triads, because I use this 2-note stuff, but I think ultimately organize the guitar around 3-note triad, all these tight triads, all these little tight voicings, and these are subsets of it. So like what you were doing when you're doing a 6, you can see the chord filling in the gap in the middle of that. So I use that a lot, but that's another whole can of worms that I don't want to get into today.
Yes, that's understandable.
I do have a can of worms I do want to get into today, which is this concept I have on these last couple of pages, which is another thing I have to elaborate on, which is the idea of 2-string triads. Aha, yes. So
we're on
pages 3 and 4.
3 and 4.
3 and 4. Page 3 is the C major version, and page 4 is the C minor version.
Okay.
Okay? And it's on every set of strings. So what I'm doing here, and the reason I call this 2-note triads, or 2-string triads, is that once you put them together in context, you hear the overall sound of the chord, but at no time are you playing anything more than 2 notes. So let me show you this. So the first one, the top one on the C, is basically this idea on the top 2 strings. So I'm taking 2 notes of the chord, C and E, and then what I'm doing is basically going to the chord note that's missing, which is the G. So now I got C and G. Right? Now the missing note is E, so we got E and G. Right? Now the missing note is C, so we go E and C. E back here.
Oh.
And then C up here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 5 and 8.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, 5 and 8. Yeah, and then it's C, G and C, just straight across. Yep. Yep, and then G and E brings good things to life. Yes, and then we finally have C and E, and we're back to where we started up an octave. And I even threw the G on there just because it's there. It filled out the measure. Okay, so think about this. Now, when I do that,
Happy days of hearing, yeah.
exactly. And think about it. What are you hearing? You're hearing chord tones. You're hearing the whole thing. Now, how do you use this? All right. Underneath this, you have all these notes of the C scale, and you can put them together all these different ways. But a lot of them, just thinking of a little position, you can play a lot of times 6 notes at any given place. And so what I can do is, if I'm thinking of this little triad shape, this little 2-note thing, and then I know the scale underneath it, I can start doing some manipulation of the notes so that you're hearing movement and melody, but you're also hearing essentially a chord. So here would be an example. If I play C and E,
yeah.
right? So I can keep the C constant, which is in music called oblique motion. So I'm going to keep one note constant, and I'm going to move the other note pretty much as far as I can on the string. Now, if you play the C chord again, now go to an F. I'll show you what happens. Now go back to the C. Right? And now I'm following you. I'm playing 2 notes, and yet it sounds like I'm playing some kind of harmony.
Yeah.
Go somewhere. Anyway.
F.
Yeah.
To the G.
Yep. So that's this whole idea, and I got to say this idea. Once I started really I came up with this idea of these 2-string triads. It really opened a lot of doors, and it's really easy to make music that sounds very complicated, and yet you're just saying, oh, I'm playing a C and E. Okay, I can throw the notes in between. Okay, yeah, that's cool. And then you just work on how many different melodic ways can you do it. Now notice I was keeping the C constant. I could keep the E constant. And you don't even have to do these big reaches. I mean, the big reaches are nice because you can see what's going on, but you can also do, you can put that on another string too, so you don't always have to do these crazy big reaches. I know my hand goes pretty far. It's, sorry. Anyway, so what I have here is I have a full page of all the major C major on all 5 sets of adjacent strings, and then the same thing with the C minor. And to be honest, the other reason why these little 2-note chords, these little 2-note triad things are handy is there's really only 4 kinds of triads. See, that's why I use the term triad, right? Because triad is not just a generic 3-note chord. In music, a triad means major, minor, augmented, diminished, nothing else. That's a triad, okay? Yeah. And so the triad has got a specific meaning beyond just the 3-ness of it. Yeah. And so that's what I'm exploiting there. I'm saying I'm playing one of these 3 chords on this set of strings. And pretty much you can mostly get away with major and minor. I mean, you don't even need to get into the augmented and the diminished triads for a while because, you're not going to use them as much. This is the main bulk of it all.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Plus, in the sense of a 2-note chord, you're only adding a third, which would just twist it ever so you can still stay in the minor or a major. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, yes, you can do, and do all these big chords, but you can also and do the same thing with 2 notes, and it's a lot more interesting.
Right. Right. Well, you played when we first started. There was a lot of 2-note. 2-note voicings that you were using. Would you mind?
This all fits right into the. I'm going to keep the A bass going.
Yep. Yep.
It's all 2 notes.
So now take it back to there. When you did this, you can walk between these 2 notes. So you got chord tones, and you got a little passing tone in the middle. Right.
Or walk it back up.
Yeah, exactly. All these little different games, right? Yep.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of Blind Lemon. Mm-hmm. He does a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
He's just using 2-note voicings.
Right.
That's what he's doing. But I think it has huge applications for me, you know, with this stuff, because I like little voicings like this, the partial chords and the 3-note chords. And I also think when you played and emphasized the middle 2 strings here,
Yep.
that really is exceptionally nice sound for acoustic blues. Brings out the mid-range.
Yes, yes.
You know, which you don't hear a lot of. A lot of people don't play on these strings too much.
I know.
But it's
Yeah.
So, for the next show, we're going to go for 3s, right?
We're going to add that extra note.
And make it a wonderful, wonderful triad, and start discussing triads. This is great, Mark. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you want to make any more mention on the minor here?
Well, I mean, basically the minor is, you know, you got to get used to all these different ways. The minor's got a few more reaches in it, but it's, you know. See, like, so here's, well, I'll make this mention. It's really,
we're running out. So
I know, all right, so do it in A minor.
Okay.
A minor, because you get to use the key of C, and then also you get this nice drone.
Well, let's take it out with the A minor. And I want to thank you all for joining us again. And if you have any comments, please feel free to email me. We have our little email address here. And I hope you are enjoying this wonderful sequence of different kinds of guitars. All right, take care now.